Tonight, a businessman convicted of raping his then teenage daughter will tell you how long the jury deliberated before delivering a verdict. Also, there's more than seasonal allergies going around. Health officials issuing an advisory for respiratory illnesses among school-aged children. Plus, are we headed for a recession? The economic minister remains optimistic, shooting down those claims. And then in our news at 7:30, how the National Security Minister says the Bahamas will step up to help a country in crisis if necessary. Our news at 7 starts now. Welcome to our news and thanks for joining us. I'm Kendino Knowles. A 48-year-old businessman will spend the next 2 months behind bars before his sentencing after he was convicted today for raping his teenage daughter. The girl reported the sexual abuse in January 2017 after secretly recording her father pleading with her to remain quiet because he didn't want to go to prison. The jury of 5 women and 3 men deliberated for 2 hours before reaching a verdict. Jurors heard that the man raped his daughter twice in 2015 and 2016 when she was 15 and 16. The now 22-year-old woman testified how her father molested her shortly after he came into her life. The man had insisted she wasn't his child until a DNA test proved otherwise, and as a result, a court ordered him to pay child support. Both incidents happened in the gated community where he lived with his fiancée and son. Assistant Director of Public Prosecutions Basil Cumberbatch suggested that the man molested his daughter because he was resentful of making maintenance payments. The man denied molesting his daughter and claimed the recording was fake. He said she made up the incest claim because he didn't buy her a car. Justice Gilomena Arteminis remanded the man to prison until December 12 for sentencing. Muriel Ducille KC has requested a probation report ahead of the sentencing hearing. Well, a man has been jailed for 8 years for his role in the death of a man who was killed in a road rage attack. 22-year-old Jonathan Griffin and his teenage passenger dragged Andrew Lloyd Sturrup from his car after they got into a traffic accident on Palm Tree Avenue on February 2, 2021. As they both beat Sturrup, Griffin's passenger pulled a knife and fatally stabbed him. They fled the scene together. However, they were arrested soon after and charged with Sturrup's murder. Griffin pleaded guilty on Tuesday to causing dangerous harm to Sturrup as part of a plea deal. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison, less the 5 months he had spent in custody before he was freed on bail. Meanwhile, a 30-year-old man is dead tonight after being struck by a car on Tonic William Starling Highway near Theodore Lane. Police Press Liaison Officer Kristen Skippings confirming the fatality, saying the incident happened around 7 o'clock this morning. Police say the Theodore Lane resident, who was in a wheelchair, was struck by a blue Nissan Note. The victim was taken to hospital where he died from his injuries. A tip about a firearm led to the arrest of a security officer around midday on Monday by officers from the Mobile Division. They reportedly found a handgun and ammunition after searching the 27-year-old security officer who was at a government building on East Street South and south of Zion Boulevard. The Two Chop Corner resident is assisting police with their investigation. Now to another story we are following tonight. If you have school-aged children, doctors are warning of a rise in respiratory illnesses over the last few months. In a statement today, Princess Margaret Hospital's pediatric team saying cases spiked when school reopened. Some symptoms include fever, cough, and a runny nose, which are usually mild and can be addressed by a primary care physician. Newborns up to 6 weeks or children in respiratory distress should receive care in an emergency room. Signs of respiratory distress include rapid breathing, inability to speak, inability to drink liquids, and uncontrollable cough and wheezing. Now, if you want to read the full statement now, visit ournews.bs. Meanwhile, cholera concerns rising across the country following the announcement of a confirmed case in the Bahamas last week, and now a clinical advisor is sharing how you can spot the signs but also prevent it. Dr. Stacey Bevins, who directs community health services in Grand Bahama, sharing with our news the most common cause of cholera is contaminated food or water.
If someone uses the bathroom and does not wash their hand, they can actually transfer the bacteria to the food. Also, in cases where water is not collected and preserved properly, then that water can contain stool or feces, and that feces can have the Vibrio cholera in bacteria, and this can cause the disease.
Now, coming up in our news at 7:30, Dr. Bevins shares more on how cholera can impact both kids and adults. It's time now for your first look at temperatures across the country, and meteorologist Greg Thompson is standing by in the Weather Center with your latest look. Greg?
Yeah, Candino, partly cloudy skies right now. We did have some isolated showers and some thunderstorms earlier today, but a frontal boundary to the north of us. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. That kept us partly cloudy, and most of the day we're still seeing some clouds out there. 86 degrees. Some of those showers are nearby, so we have a few passing showers. Winds are now out of the west-southwest at 7 miles per hour ahead of that front. Your feels-like temperature, very humid, 87 degrees. On our temperature profile around the islands right now, across the northwest Bahamas, temperatures cooler in the extreme northern islands, 80 degrees in Freeport with some showers around 84 in Marsh Harbor. Also in Alistown, Bimini, we pick up 85 in Great Harbor Key, that's across in the Berry Islands. Nicholstown, Andros, Governor's Harbor, we are at 85. Here in the capital, temperatures near the 86 degree mark. Into the central Bahamas, temperatures a little warmer there. 83 in Kemps Bay, pardon me. That's South Andros. Arthurstown, Cat Island, 84. We pick up 87 in Coburn Townsend, Salvador. Over in Georgetown, 86, Deadman's Key at 85. Southeast Bahamas, all mid to upper 80s there, 87 in Duncantown, Ragged Island. We pick up 84s in Colonel Hill, Crooked Island, Abrahams Bay. Over in Delectable Bay, that's in Acklands, you guys are at 85. 85 also in Matthewtown, Inagua. Neighbors to the southeast, Turks and Caicos Islands, you are 86 at this hour. On our satellite view, we have a frontal boundary, as I mentioned, across central Florida, but there's some prefrontal activity that moved through the capital and the northwest Bahamas, now pushing across the central Bahamas, and that will exit the area. But we do have some more showers in the Gulf of Mexico that is headed our way, so we're looking at some more showers and some isolated thunderstorms possible tonight to tomorrow as this frontal boundary continues to sag towards the south. Expected to get nearby tomorrow and then pushing the central Bahamas by Thursday. That's your first check on weather. Stick with us. Your look at the tropics and your extended forecast is still to come.
Still to come on our news, is a recession looming? The economic minister says he doesn't think so. We'll tell you why. Also, why the labor director says a recent job fair was a success as more than 1,000 people lined up for labor on the blocks. And help for Haiti, what the foreign minister says the Bahamas is doing to get Haiti out of crisis. That exclusive interview and more on the other side of this break. As international economists predict a global recession, Economic Affairs Minister Michael Halkitis is tonight saying that's not on the horizon for the Bahamas, as indicators are showing otherwise.
My view is, in finance, you're always cautiously optimistic. Our experience is that we're having a strong rebound in tourism. The tourism officials believe, they see that this demand persists well into next year. And so one silver lining of any recession, particularly when you talk about the U.S., is our source market. 80+% of our visitors come from the U.S. If there's recession, I always look at it, perhaps somebody doesn't take a vacation as far away, they decide to come to the Bahamas, so it can even be a benefit.
Halkitis says government isn't worried about a recession and that it remains optimistic. Asked if the country is bracing for the possibility.
Bracing for a recession? No, I don't think you brace for a recession. I don't think, like I say, you don't claim it. So far, our experience is good. Tourism rebound is strong. Construction is very strong. The foreign direct investment pipeline is very, very healthy. The government is doing some things in terms of construction and infrastructure. So, let's ride this wave.
And our news wishes to convey apologies to the Grand Bahama Port Authority for a mistake in a report aired in Monday's broadcast. In that report, where Minister for Grand Bahama, Ginger Moxie, said she was caught off guard by a recent fuel cost hike by the Grand Bahama Power Company, we referenced the GBPA instead of the GBPC. Well, it's been 3 days since the Department of Labor held its latest Labor on the Block's job fair, and the numbers are in. Turns out more than 1,500 people showed up looking to trade the unemployment line for employment. Labor Director Robert Farquharson calling it a success story.
The job fair was extremely successful, we believe. We, at 9 a.m. on Saturday morning, we had hundreds and hundreds of young men and women seeking to enter the job fair and take advantage of the employment opportunities. By 2 o'clock that afternoon, we would have seen an excess of about 1,500 persons who came to take full advantage of the 45 employers that were present at the site. In addition to the employers that were present at the site, we had a number of training opportunities for those men and women who did not have the skills necessary to meet the challenges of the labor market.
The job fair was held on Saturday at Rogers High School on Faith Avenue South and attracted lots of job seekers, as you see there. There's a number of young people that showed up.
One of the other things we saw was that the average age of those persons attending the job fair, we estimate the average age was between 21 and 26. Young people and young men in particular came to the job fair seeking employment.
When our news comes back from the break, we turn our spotlight to stories making headlines across the world as an increase in bird flu poultry deaths may mean higher prices for your holiday turkey dinner. Plus, the latest in a resolution being drafted to help Haiti during its crisis. You'll only see it on our news. And health officials on the way to Cuba amid complaints Cuban-trained Bahamians aren't being given job opportunities here at home. The full story when our news returns. This is our news. Welcome back. We turn our attention now to stories from around the world. Liz Truss getting a key endorsement in defending her position as Great Britain's Prime Minister. Armed Forces Minister James Heappey says this is not the time to change leaders, suggesting that a candidate to replace Truss as Conservative Party leader is, quote,
I think
for
she's
the birds.
out of her depth, really. So I think just delaying the inevitable. I think she's going to have to resign.
I don't think she's ever looked really comfortable in the job, and I think she possibly knows that that's what they were intending anyway. So, but I don't think she's probably the right one.
Those were Truss constituents, as Armed Force Minister James Heappey says that obviously this is not the time to change leadership. Now, despite the U-turns that Truss has had to make for the mistakes made over her ill-fated mini-budget she introduced within weeks of taking office, Chancellor Jeremy Hunt reversed almost all of the tax cuts. Now, U.S. consumers may be paying more for poultry this winter after a record number of chickens and turkeys died this year after an outbreak of the avian flu known commonly as bird flu. More than 47 million birds died from infections and cullings, spurring a ban on exported eggs and turkey production. It meant record prices in the U.S. ahead of the holiday season starting next month. This particular strain of flu survived over the summer when viruses like this typically die due to rising temperatures.
When our chickens get bird flu from some birds, some wild fowl that's infected with bird flu flying over. You know, yes, because when they fly, you know, there's fecal matter. My feed is up over 100%. So I'm paying over double for what I was paying for a couple of years ago. Fuel's up 40%. Packaging is up, depending on the packaging, 25%. Labor, 10 to 15%.
Industrial troubles growing in France after trade unionists began a nationwide strike demanding higher salaries as that country faces the highest inflation in decades. Tuesday's strike, which affects public sectors like schools and transportation, is an extension of the week-long industrial action that has disrupted French refineries and caused major petrol shortages. This is shaping up to be one of the biggest challenges to French President Emmanuel Macron, as rail operators are seeing severe disruptions in the train service in various parts of the country. But the inner Paris metro system is mostly unaffected, at least for now. On to the region, where Mexicans at risk for monkeypox are going abroad for vaccines, claiming their government has not bothered to make it available at home. The World Health Organization ranks Mexico 9th in the world in total cases, yet officials have not announced plans to acquire vaccines, while other Latin American countries received shipments.
It is an issue that the government had ignored until Saturday. It is a health problem with thousands of cases in the world, and the underreporting in Mexico has caused a big problem due to inefficiency of the health systems, and also the lack of treatment and good treatment for people.
The first shipment of monkeypox vaccines arrived in the Bahamas on Monday. In a rare bipartisan move, U.S. congressional Democrats and Republicans announced legislation to help address Haiti's worsening humanitarian and security crisis. The legislation punishes Haiti's political elites found colluding with criminal gangs. The Haitian Criminal Collusion Transparency Act requires the U.S. State Department to investigate the relationship between gangs and elites. Punishment could include sanctions for human rights violations and visa restrictions for gang leaders and their supporters. Chairman of the U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Senator Bob Mendez, said in a statement, it is time for both Haiti's gangs and their financiers and political backers to face more consequences.
No to the Canadians, no to the Americans. You are monsters. You don't have solutions. You are chaos. You are behind the gangsterization of crime. You are giving arms to our brothers and those who are in underprivileged neighborhoods.
And amid ongoing issues in Haiti, Foreign Affairs Minister Fred Mitchell says a resolution is being drafted calling for armed support for Haitian police officers. Mitchell says advice is being sought from local law enforcement on the matter, adding that the Prime Minister will hold discussions with regional leaders.
The prudent thing for our own country to do is to have our forces give us advice on, if we are asked for such an eventuality, can we participate and to what extent we can participate. Prime Minister Davis will be meeting with his CARICOM colleagues tonight by Zoom to further discuss the matter, and we'll try and keep the country abreast of what's happening as things develop.
Mitchell recounted the Bahamas taking part in a similar mission in 1994 when law enforcement officers were sent to Haiti to assist. The news comes after he said the Bahamas could be called to assist with Haiti's issues now.
What we understand is happening now is that the United States is preparing a resolution. Perhaps the Canadian government is also involved, because I've had discussions with them today, to move the UN to see whether or not the UN is prepared to answer the request of the de facto Haitian government for some support for their national police with boots on the ground.
Now, we also spoke with the National Security Minister about the possibility of the Bahamas sending troops to help in Haiti. Berthany McDermott has more on that coming up in our news at 7:30. Meanwhile, Minister of Health and Wellness Dr. Michael Darville is off to Havana this week to address concerns of Bahamian students studying medicine in Cuba. An issue was raised by some Bahamian students of Escuela Latino-Americana de Medicina at a meeting with the Bahamas Ambassador to Cuba, Dr. Ellison Ramming, where they expressed concerns over what they say is an apparent bias in the Bahamas against hiring Cuban-trained Bahamian doctors. Here's what the Health Minister had to say.
I don't really understand the whole circumstances around it, but I did reach out to our ambassador in Cuba. I plan to have a meeting with them.
He says a meeting on the matter is part of his agenda while abroad and hopes a resolution will be one that can help all Bahamians studying abroad.
That is part of my agenda, and of course, they are medical students studying abroad, and I need to listen to their concerns and ultimately come up with a strategy to assist any Bahamian studying in any country. But that meeting is scheduled I don't know, sometime this week before Friday.
Still to come on our news, today in history, the interesting facts about the day that was October 18th, including the death of a bright inventor, Thomas Edison. And then in our news at 7:30, from hand washing to avoiding raw foods, how you can stay safe and healthy in the time of cholera. It's all coming up when our news returns. Welcome back to our news. It's now time to turn our spotlight on the events that shaped the day that was October 18th. Here are your interesting facts to note about this day in history. October 18th, 1922, the British broadcasting company BBC was formed. A BBC logo is seen here at the company's main offices in West London on the day the organization announced one of the biggest shakeups in its 82-year history in December 2005. At the time, company sources said Britain's well-respected public broadcaster planned to axe at least 10% of its jobs and trim £320 million in costs. Then in 1931, the great American inventor Thomas Edison died. In his lifetime, Edison held over 1,000 patents, the most famous being the electric lamp, the phonograph, and the motion picture projector. He also created the world's first industrial research laboratory. October 18, 1961, the acclaimed musical film West Side Story, an adaptation of a Broadway play, was released in American theaters. It won 10 Academy Awards, including for Best Picture. The film received rave reviews from critics and viewers and became the highest-grossing film of 1961. Then in 1988, American sitcom Roseanne, starring Roseanne Barr, premiered on ABC and became hugely popular, noted for deriving humor from the everyday struggles of middle-class families and for tackling controversial issues. During the initial run, the series remained in the top 4 for 6 of the 9 seasons and in the top 20 for 8. During a short-lived revival, the series reached number 3 with an average of 18 million viewers per episode within the span of its 9 episodes. And on this day in 2007, we saw the first ever fashion show on the Great Wall of China. Here, a model is being assisted off the catwalk while wearing a dress by fashion label Fendi at sunset. A total of 88 models displayed designs by designers Karl Lagerfeld and Silvia Venturini, Fendi, and others during the show. All right, 6 new Bahamian ambassadors were commissioned this afternoon as part of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs' Diplomatic Week 2022. The new ambassadors are V. Alfred Gray to Canada, Cheryl Bazard to Belgium, Sharon Wilson to Mexico, Anthony Ferguson to New Zealand, Cedric Scott to Japan, and Paul Roll to the International Maritime Organization. Following their commissioning, each new ambassador gave remarks expressing goals and thanks for their new roles. Prime Minister Philip Davis and Foreign Affairs Minister Fred Mitchell also bringing remarks. We'll have more from that ceremony in our news tomorrow. Well, after graduating university, are you really ready for the workforce? Well, the University of the Bahamas is looking to prepare students for the job market after their tertiary studies, but they're hosting a career symposium to equip students with the information to do it. UB Career and Job Placement Counselor Dr. Walissa Niobe Mackey says job readiness is a major focus.
One of the things we have given focus to and will continue to give focus to would be the soft skills, communication, interpersonal skills, all of the skills that help us to be able to work well and contribute well to the work environment. While you may have a degree, how well do you work with other people? How good are you at communicating your goal, your vision? And so that's an area that we will be focusing on continuously moving forward.
All right, well, that does it for us in our news at 7. And for all of today's top stories, visit ournews.bs. Joining us now is our Talia Hall. She's got the latest headlines. Atalia?
Yes, Ken, the situation over in Haiti still dominating the news this week as world leaders, including our own, stand ready to move in.
The National Security Minister says the Bahamas will answer Haiti's call for help if necessary. How the country is working with the United Nations and United States to find a solution to Haiti's crisis. Plus, increased hand washing is one of the small steps to staying safe from cholera. Tonight, a Grand Bahama doctor tells us what else you can do to prevent cholera from spreading. 1 in 4 Bahamians are making minimum wage. The labor director breaks down the numbers on our news. And later, from tragedy to ministry, how one woman has made helping others her mission. The founder of Families of All Murder Victims sits down with our news. Our news at 7:30 starts in a moment.